Word pairing 1. The word is egg, penny, amp, friendship, trench.
Trench.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Administering 15 volts.
I am thoroughly frightened by man's capacity to hurt one another, their capacity to carry out genocide, especially during the Holocaust. I pondered the question, could it be that Eichmann and his million accomplices in the Holocaust were just following orders? Could we call them all accomplices? Are people's capacity to kill justified by obedience?
We are moving to question 7. The word is fresh, tangy, lemon, stage, fingers.
Fingers.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Administering 75 volts.
The original experiment was this. 40 male volunteers between ages 20 and 50, whose jobs ranged from unskilled to professional from the New Haven area, were recruited for a lab experiment investigating learning. I would like to make a note that the volunteers were later told of this deception and the purpose of the experiment was told to them in full. At the beginning of the experiment, these volunteers were introduced to another participant who was actually Confederate, an actor. Upon introduction, the Confederate and the volunteer would draw straws to determine their roles in the study, one role being learner and the other role being teacher. This assignment was fixed, for the Confederate was always the learner. A third participant, a Confederate posing as the experimenter, was dressed in a gray lab coat. This image gave him more authority and credibility as a scientist. We used 2 rooms in the Yale Interaction Laboratory. The learner, or the Confederate, was led into one room containing an electric chair. The room where the teacher and the experimenter entered was equipped with an electric shock generator. The learner is then strapped to a chair with electrodes. Once he has memorized a list of word pairs given to him, the teacher tests him by naming a word and asking the learner to recall its partner from a list of 4 possible choices. Mind you, the electric chair was not hooked up and no harm was done to any person. A lot of the times the struggling the teacher heard was a recording on loop, played every time a certain voltage was reached. We just wanted to see how far someone would go when prodded by an authority. The teacher is told to administer an electric shock every time the learner makes a mistake, increasing the level of shock each time. There were 30 switches on the shock generator, marked from 15 volts, a slight shock, to 450, a very severe, potentially lethal shock.
The word is tree, lemon, loop, boss.
Loop.
I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Administering 150 volts.
Ah! Get me out of here! Get me out of here! It's just an experiment! Just stop already!
May I proceed?
The learner gave mainly wrong answers, on purpose, and for each of these, the teacher gave him an electric shock. When the teacher refused to administer a shock, the experimenter was to give a series of orders and prods to ensure they continued. There were 4 prods, and if one was not obeyed, then the experimenter read out the next prod, and so on.
This experiment is safe, isn't it?
Please continue.
We aren't hurting him, are we?
The experiment requires you to continue. It is absolutely essential that you continue. You have no other choice but to continue.
The word is chair, lemon, tree, pedal. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Administering 450 volts.
After completing the experiment, we found that 65%, 2/3 of participants continued to the highest level of 450 volts. All participants continued to 300 volts. After this original experiment, I continued to vary the study. My variation count is 18. What I did was alter the situation, the independent variable, and observed how it affected obedience, the dependent variable. People are obedient. From the moment we are born, we are taught to follow orders, to obey. When asked to obey an authority figure, we typically obey more. Stark authority was pitted against the subject's strongest moral imperatives against hurting others, and with the subject's ears ringing with the screams of the victims, authority won more often than not. The extreme willingness of adults to go to almost any lengths on the command of an authority constitutes the chief finding of the study and the fact most urgently demanding explanation.